Acme Corp needs to test and deploy a new customer portal application for their sales team. In part 2 of this video series, following the enterprise admin's setup, the organization admin for the Acme-Sales Organization will further configure the organization by creating projects, namespaces, and namespace classes, enabling developers and application team to deploy and consume apps and services. So let's get started. So back to our slide, we will now focus on the organization admin, whose responsibility is to create projects, namespaces, and assign users and policies to those projects. So let's click on the organization admin to start the demo. So now that we've created an Acme sales organization, we click on our change organization and we provide that organization name Acme Sales. And we hit continue, and then we can log in with the first user that we've created in part 1 of this video series. So provide the admin credentials and log in into the Acme Sales as the org administrator. We, of course, land on the overview page, and we can see we have 0 projects, 0 namespaces, 0 policies, and we have 7 users. And we don't see any services at the moment because we have not created any namespaces as of yet. So the first thing we need to do is to create a content library. If you recall, in part 1 of this video series, we've allowed the Acme Sales as an organization to subscribe to external content library. So we're going to click on content libraries under build and deploy and click on create content library. We'll provide a name. So we'll call it Acme Sales External Library. And we can provide a meaningful description that describes the library. The 2 options we see is that the default that we assign this content library to all current and future namespaces, meaning any existing namespaces or future namespaces within this organization will have access to this content library and the images it's holding. I'm going to leave it toggled on. And then the next option is because we're creating a subscribed content library, I'm going to toggle the subscribe to an external library option and hit next and provide the URL to the external library that I have access to. Again, this is going to be a content library. And so the region that been allocated to Acme Sales is US West, again, as we saw in the previous video. And then I'm going to use the storage allocated to this organization, which is the default policy that was allocated to Acme Sales and currently is 2 terabytes. I'm going to hit next. This is where the content library is going to get created, and then confirm my settings. And it should subscribe to the external library and sync the images. We can see, first of all, the type of this content library. This is a tenant type, meaning created by the organization, and not a shared content library coming from the provider side, which is something that the provider can do to share content library with all the organization that they manage. We can see that it's subscribed. So we see yes under subscribed and the creation date of this content library. Now, if we click on VM images, we can see that the images that was synchronized based on our subscription to this content library, and we can see they're all ready, meaning ready for use. Also, each image has an image identifier or VMI. So this VMI gets created automatically and assigned to the VM images that we've discovered. You can also see that there are 2 types of images that we can upload to content libraries or contained in the content library, and that's an ISO or template, which is the OVF. It's an OVA, so OVA, OVFs, or ISOs are the supported images that can be contained in the content library. Okay, so now that we have our images and our content library, we're ready to go in and go to manage and govern within the organization portal. The first thing we want to do is, before creating a project, we need to create a namespace class. A namespace class are basically templates for defining the guardrails and the parameters that are used when we actually create a namespace from it. things like CPU limits, reservation, what storage to use, what VM classes to use, etc. So we're going to go ahead and create a namespace class. We'll just call it default. And also notice on the far right of the screen is that we have the Kubernetes resource YAML that's going to get generated based on our selections. So we gave it a name, and we'll go to the limits. And if we remember in part 1 of the video, we've allocated 100 gigahertz of CPU and 256 gig of memory to this organization when we allocated region quotas to it. So out of that 100, I'm going to take 20 gigahertz for this template and 64 gigabyte of memory for this template without reservations. On the VM and storage class, again, as we remember, as part of the US West region, we've made all classes available within the region. And now also this is an opportunity for the org admin to also be selective and select any specific classes that they want to make available for their projects. We're going to go ahead and select all of them. So again, this will include the best effort classes or the guaranteed classes as well. So I'm going to hit add and move on to the storage class. Again, the only storage class available within the US West region is the ESN-backed storage based on the storage class that was allocated to the region. And as we remember again in the previous video, the provider gave the Acme-Sales Organization 2 terabyte of storage that they can consume. So we can see that is represented in the region field, US West 2048 gigabyte of storage. So I'm going to select 400 out of that 2 terabytes as part of the configuration of the VM class. Okay, so the namespace class now is created. This is our template, and we're going to use that every time we're going to create a namespace. You can create multiple namespace classes based on your use case and for what you need to allocate or enforce on the project. Now that we're ready, we can go to the project and create our first project. We're going to name the project based on the application that we're trying to deploy, which is called Customer Portal. So the project name is Customer Portal. We'll hit next, and we'll start adding our users. Now, one thing that we're not showing here in this demo is that behind the scenes, we went and actually connected this organization to an LDAP identity provider. So I'm going to go and import users. So we've already imported users from that identity provider, and we're going to add those users to this project that we're just creating. So I'm going to do select Connie as the first user. I'm going to assign Connie the project administrator. The project administrator can manage members and catalog content, meaning they can create blueprints, they can consume IaaS services, and they can publish things to the catalog. I'm going to hit add, and I'm going to repeat this for the rest of the users. So we have Bob as a basic project user. We have Mary as an advanced user. Mary or any user within the project admin, within the project advanced user role, can access the IaaS services, while project users can only access catalog items. And then we have Ethan as the project auditor, which can see everything but in read-only mode. I'm going to hit next, and I'm going to review the specified values, and we'll create our project. Now that our project is created, we're ready to create the namespaces. So we're going to create 2 namespaces. The first one is going to represent our development environment. And then the namespace is going to be created based on the namespace class we defined. So everything we defined in the default namespace class in terms of memory limits, CPU limits and reservations, VM classes, what storage classes to use, content library. Remember, the content library was auto-attached. So it's going to attach itself automatically to the namespaces. And then this is going to be in the region that's been allocated to this organization and the virtual private cloud or VPC networking, which we will talk about in a minute. But now we're going to select the default VPC assigned to the org based on the provider allocation of regional networking and networking configuration that we saw in the first video of this series. We know our supervisor only had one zone, so I'm going to select that. You can be very selective in terms, for example, where you want the resources to be provisioned. It can be to one zone, and if we had multiple zones, you can select one or more. And then notice here when I selected the zone, the guaranteed VM classes disappeared from the list before I created. And the reason for that, if you noticed, when we created the namespace class, we did not define any reservations. So the reservation was 0. Therefore, we can't use guaranteed namespace classes that requires reservations or includes reservations. So I'm going to go ahead and click create to create my first namespace. And we can see our namespace development has been created with a generated code to make sure that it's unique across the vCenter. This automatically happens. And this is coming from the default namespace class. This tells us the source of this namespace and what configuration it may contain based on the namespace class it was provisioned from. And then in what region, being US West, and what VPC or networking boundary it's actually using. I'm going to repeat that and create now a production namespace using the same settings. We can use the same VPC to create additional namespaces, or later we'll see that the cloud admin, the org admin, can create new VPCs that they may perhaps use that instead. So I'm going to select zone 1 again, and I'm going to create my second namespace. Now we have 2 namespaces that we can provision infrastructure to, or infrastructure and application to. So if I expand or click the double arrow on one of these namespaces, like production, we can see the services now available within the namespace. We have virtual machine, Kubernetes, volume, network, and virtual machine image. And we can see that it's active. And if we click again on the overview menu on the top, we see now that we have 1 project, 2 namespaces, 7 users that were imported. And now we see actually the services. So we can access the services from here, and we have a namespace selector in terms of targeting which namespace I want to provision infrastructure and application to. So we're going to collapse the selector. And since we're selecting development, we're going to go and actually click on the services overview, which takes us to the summary page of the namespace. So we see again the namespace selector on the left-hand side, and we can see all the services listed underneath. Of course, we're logged in as the org admin who has access to the IaaS services, just like the advanced user that we will later see in video 3 of the series. We see all the core services: virtual machine, network, virtual machine image, Kubernetes, and volume. We can go to the service that takes us to the menu, or go and create a resource directly, which we will see in the next video. We also have information about the namespace, what region it's part of, the project versus the namespace. So we can see customer portal is the project, and development being the namespace, what zone it's actually configured to use, what VM classes and VPC it's using, and the CPU, memory, and storage limits. If we go to manage and govern and click on the networking, we see the default VPC that got created based on the fact that the provider admin in the first video allocated networking configuration to Acme-Sales as an organization. For time to value, what we do is we create a default VPC that can be used right away. This VPC is using a default transit gateway as well in the region of US West. It has a private CIDR that it was hard-coded with. It also using a SourceNet IP from the IP space that we've created for Acme-Sales. The IP space are the subnet that is allowed on the external network. And then the namespaces that are using this VPC would be listed under the namespaces column and the status of the VPC. If we wanted to create new VPCs as the org admin, I can, of course, click on new VPC and create my new VPC. If we go to IP management, we see the allocated IP spaces to the Acme-Sales Organization. We can see the external IP space which is coming from the Acme-Sales IP space blog that we saw before. And you can see there's a padlock on it, so you can't use or change it. You can't use it. So you can't change it as an org admin, because this is something that is only configured by the provider on the provider side. We also see the private VPC hard-coded CIDR that was assigned to this org. This is the subnet that's going to be used for any private subnets within this VPC. We also see another type of private subnet, but this one is the transient gateway scoped. This subnets allow workload connected to this subnet to talk to each other or communicate across VPCs within an org. So we see that it's using CIDR 192.183.237.0/24, and it's using also the default VPC. If we go back to overview, we now see the out-of-the-box integration with VCF operations, and we see the total utilization across CPU, memory, and storage. And of course, we have not provisioned any infrastructure or application. Therefore, we're showing the top 3 consumers. These consumers being can be filtered by projects or namespaces. And as you can see, we have 0 hertz of CPU, 0 gigabyte of memory, and 0 gigabyte of storage due to the fact that we have not provisioned anything as of yet, which we will see in the next video. Using VMware Cloud Foundation, Acme Corp now can build a private cloud while abstracting the underlying backend services. This provides a seamless and uniform way to consume and deploy infrastructure and applications across the entire VMware Cloud Foundation fleet, ensuring efficiency and ease of use. That wraps up this video. We hope this walkthrough helped clarify the VCF private cloud experience and gave you the necessary tools to move forward. Until next time, thank you for watching.